Hello and welcome to Hope for Today. I'm glad you chose to join us, and if you're watching, thank you. We're both in plaid today. If you're listening, then you're going to have to imagine we're both in plaid today. I have a good friend with me, Keith Kirkwood. Welcome, Keith. Thank you for being here today. And he's going to talk about the ministry he and his wife Gladys lead called SafeNet Ministries. So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, we go back a few years.
Yeah, I was just thinking earlier today what a blessing it was when you came to our place, and just your ministry was so powerful there.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. I remember the thing that stood out to me this morning was I remembered in the very first service, you had just started speaking, and you just stopped and called on somebody that had, I forgot what the need was now, there's some sickness or something. You just called it out. I said, if you're here, come forward. So people came forward, and you said, this is so easy with Jesus, and you just prayed for them.
It was a fun service.
Yeah, it was great.
Good.
And so thank you for that.
And we are related now by marriage. My son-in-law is your grandson.
That's right.
Will. He's a fabulous addition to our family. We love him. We just thank him for being who he is, and thank you for all the investment in his life.
Thank you for
he really appreciates you.
He's a tremendous young man. And
yeah, he is.
We're so thankful for Eden. We've prayed for her since Will was born.
No, that's sweet. Yeah. You know, we did the same thing. Didn't know it was Will, but
that's right.
Yeah, when I met Will, he was 14. I really liked him then. I like him even more now. So
yeah.
He's a great guy. Well, let's face into what you do, which is of kingdom import. In fact, I believe in it so much I support what you're doing monthly.
You do?
And it's called SafeNet Ministries. Explain that to us.
SafeNet Ministries was born actually back in the 70s in our hearts. We're driving up the Coast Highway one night, had just closed out a meeting in San Diego, was driving up into Los Angeles to start another meeting the next morning. Back in those days, we didn't take nights off.
Right.
We thought that was a sin. So we would close on a Saturday night service and take off, load up on the bus and take off to the next service to begin on Sunday. And so we were driving from San Diego to Los Angeles to start the next morning at a church there. And we had just left a pastor who was so depressed, who was so distressed. His family was in chaos. He was really wanting to quit. He was at his wit's end.
Mm-hmm.
And he just unloaded on us. We were just young kids, and he just unloaded on us. And the thing was, as we traveled around, we found that happening more and more.
Right.
Pastors just sharing, and I think because they felt safe with us, we were not in his neighborhood, and
right.
He didn't think it was going to get spread in his area, so he would just unload on us often, and that happened in that meeting. And so as we were driving up the Coast Highway, my partner Tim Edwards and I were talking. He was in the driver's seat, I was in the buddy chair in the bus, and it was about midnight. And we were talking about this, and I just began to cry. And I said, Tim, we have to do something to intervene in these pastors' lives.
Right.
And he said, Keith, we're so young, nobody's going to listen to us. We don't have a platform for that. How are we going to do it? So we carried that vision, that burden for years.
What year was that?
That was 1972.
72. Okay.
Yeah. You didn't think I was that old, did you?
Oh, no. No. I was around in 72, but just kind of.
Yeah. But so then when we started pastoring, we were in Texas pastoring for 14 years.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, we began to reach out to pastors. And God would just send them to us.
Right.
This was we came to Texas in 96. And so during that time, God would just send people to us, and we would embrace them, love on them, provide places for them to stay while they were in transition.
Right.
Offer them counseling, pay for professional counseling if they needed it. Eventually put them on staff a little bit, kind of a part-time thing just to give them something to do while they're recuperating, getting healthy again. I would spend hours talking to them, praying with them. I'm not a professional by any means, but just sharing the love of Christ with them and giving them some direction. We have people in the ministry today that will tell you quickly that they would not be in the ministry, may not even be serving God if it hadn't not been for those experiences with us.
Wow.
So that's where it started.
Mm-hmm.
And we've just carried it on. Now we're doing it full time since 2020.
Right. So that's exciting. So let's just say there's a minister in trouble, a pastor. You focus mainly on pastors.
Mm-hmm. Pastor, missionary.
A pastor in trouble. They contact you. What happens then? How do you?
Well, we'll have a meeting with them, kind of do an assessment, if you will, of whether or not we can help them. We have some resources that we provide for them. Partners,
right.
Counselors, coaches, mentors, safe houses that we utilize to send them to if we can't, if we
right.
feel like we can't do what needs to be done. And we're right now in the process of, we're partnering with another pastor's wife who just recently, within the last few years, passed away, and she has bought a big house, big old house. And we're partnering with her to rehab that house and make it available to pastors who need a place to go.
Wonderful.
And some of them just for refreshing.
Right. So I know we're talking to a lot of different nations today. Right now, you're focused mainly United States.
We are. We have gotten some invitations already from Europe. Eastern Europe,
mm-hmm.
Western Europe, France, Belgium,
mm-hmm.
And also in Africa. Got 2 or 3
great
people who are asking us to come there.
Right.
And
well, love the nations. So this is something that can be used by all nations. What I'm about to ask you, how can people pray for their pastors?
Well, I think the first thing that they can do is pray for their pastors to be able to have discernment.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what we found. 76%, according to Tom Rainer, 76% of pastors say that their greatest stress in ministry is finding and developing lay leadership.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hire enough people
right.
to minister to people the way they need to be ministered to, the way their needs are. So pastors are stressed and stretched thin because they don't have the time in the day to do what they need to do, and they're trying to do it all with helpers.
Right.
Well, you teach this class, when
right.
you pick up, will you do this? But if they have partners, and so what we've done is we've come alongside a ministry called Paul to Timothy Institute, Dr. Mike Awney, and we're partnering with them. They're one of our partners that teaches pastors, coaches pastors in helping them to develop their ministry leaders, making them partners in the ministry so that it relieves the stress on pastors. People don't realize, I don't think, especially since COVID. COVID changed everything.
Right.
And so since that time, the people that we have that we can lean on and we can put our weight on has diminished quite a bit.
You're right. Yeah, it's shifted. And I find this is not just in our nation, but in every nation. So if you're part of a church body, plug in. I mean, you're needed. So back to that first thing you said, pray for your pastor that they would have the gift of discerning of spirits, really, because let me go into this for a moment. As pastors, at this point, sometimes it's like you're looking for warm bodies.
Yeah.
You need people, because people who show up are people who can work, but that's not necessarily always healthy. That gift of discerning of spirits that your pastor, his spouse, that pastoral staff needs to operate in is, are these people operating in the Spirit of God? Or are they coming with their own agenda?
Yes.
Because if they're of their own agenda, that's going to weaken the church. It's going to weaken the pastor and the goal and everything. So I think that's a different prayer, but I think probably the best prayer. I agree with you. That's a great prayer.
I ask people all the time to pray for their pastor that he would have discernment, because what we know is, and you and I both know this, I'm sure you know it as I do, I've spent too much time investing in the wrong people over the some years that I've pastored.
Right.
You spend too much time investing in the wrong people because you see shiny looking, what I call shiny people.
Mm-hmm.
They look good. They have all the talent. They have all the education, all the qualities that you're looking for somebody that you can put on the stage, or you can put in position of leadership, or that seems to have the influence. And you put a lot of time into those people, but the truth is, unless they have the heart,
right, the character,
the integrity, the spiritual integrity, the spiritual character, unless they have a real relationship with Christ,
right,
which is defined in prayer time, commitment to the church, to the house, and loyalty to you.
Right.
If they don't have that, another thing that I always tell pastors, will they take direction and correction?
Right.
If they get offended at correction, or they can't take direction very well, it's a given they're not going to be able to do it very well.
Yeah, you're right. I like the description of shiny people. We all want shiny people in our lives. We're pretty shiny today, but we're also submitted. And it's different, people that can be shiny in a business world compared to in a church. It doesn't last as long, does it?
That's right.
Usually because there's spiritual warfare involved that you don't have at a business, that you can get around a lot of things. But you want to know that as a leader up front, not 6 months, 6 years later, 20 years later. I mean, sometimes it does stretch out. Mm-hmm. So I think that's great advice. And let's say a pastor does get in trouble. They're burned out. I know a lot of pastors right now in ministry are burned out. COVID kind of just sped up what was already happening. Mm-hmm. So we have pastors on the verge of saying, I'm not sure if I want to be a minister anymore. And when they get to that place, they're susceptible to failure.
That's right.
On all kind of different levels. So what is your advice to someone that is leading or on a pastoral staff or in some kind of ministry position that they're in burnout mode? What do they need to do?
It's really very, very touchy, John, as you well know, because if they're just a staff member, mm-hmm. it makes it even more difficult sometimes to convince a pastor that person needs some respite. They need some time away. They need a sabbatical, so we can help them, because mm-hmm. many times they need to be pulled out of the situation for a few months sometimes. Right. And so what we do is we help them. We give them a stipend. We can't meet all of their needs, but we help them and then help them find jobs if they need that. But pull them out of the situation so that we can pour into them, get them the help they need, get their feet back under them. What we found out is, for instance, I had a young man from Oklahoma call me here. This has been a few years ago, and I'd been in his church several times, knew his congregation well, and he called me and he said, I think it's time for me to leave my church. I think I need to go somewhere else. And I said, why do you think that? He said, well, we're just kind of plateaued. Things are not moving. I think I've talked to my buddies and I think it's time to go. And I said, well, would you do me a favor? I said, I'm going to ask you to do something for me. Get your elders to give you a 3-month sabbatical. Mm. Take 3 months off. I know your staff. You got some good preachers and teachers in there. You can do that. Take 3 months off. Don't go to that church. Take your wife, go on a vacation, go to the junior college, take a course, sit out in the backyard, read and worship, and just get. And I said, when you go back, if your church is not a new church to you, and you're not a new pastor for them, then go ahead and resign.
I like that.
And so he said, you think that'll work? And I said, yeah. And I said, I know your guys. They'll let you do it. They love you. And he said, well, I'm just thinking maybe I need to start somewhere else. I said, how long have you been there? And he told me it's been a long, long time.
Right.
I said, you have that town in the palm of your hand.
Right.
The town leaders, he was a great influence. I said, how long do you think it will take you to get that status again in another place?
Right.
God's put you there. He's given you that
a good
city.
Point.
So you need to leverage that. And so he did what I asked him to do. I was a little bit surprised because he was giving some pushback, but he did exactly what he went into his elders. They said, absolutely. So they gave him 3 months off. He came back. He called me. He said, man, you can't believe it.
Wow.
He said, I came back I couldn't wait to get back to my church. He said, we're having revival. People are being saved.
Wow,
there's excitement in the house. So, sometimes they just need to get separated.
Yeah, they do. I had a mentor tell me that a church needs a new pastor every 7 years. I thought, well, I don't know how healthy that is. He said, hopefully you'll be that pastor.
Yeah.
You have to recreate, not be fake, but really grow into the next phase of who you are. 7 is a number of completion, so I kind of like that. So I'm starting my third me here, this church. about to enter into year 21, and I've seen it. I can look back and I'll see the different phases of growth God has taken me through. And during those transitions, for me, it is, do I go? Do I stay? What happens here? And you have to make a conscious decision. And in the last one, it was pull away for a bit.
Absolutely.
Take a bit of a break, reevaluate, pray, see what God is doing, and you do come back with great energy. Here's some ways that you can reach Keith and Gladys, their ministry. And if you're living in another country, I think they'll probably still help you and kind of gear you to the right place. They have connections all over the world. Your kids are involved in missions. You love the nations. And so they'll help you wherever you're at. So look at their information. Let them know that you're praying for them and that you're believing that God is going to use them to help pastors. This is kind of a, maybe not new. It is to some pastors. Asking for help is a hard thing, very difficult for a lot of leaders, because they're the ones that people come to.
Yeah.
And they're supposed to have all the answers. But it's kind of like a painter. When he comes home, he doesn't want to paint his house. So pastors' lives can look good outside, but then their own home life sometimes can suffer, and their own internal life can suffer. Are you finding that pastors are asking for help more now, or what's going on?
John, the younger generation, the younger generation are much more easily accepting of that. They're readily able to ask for help. They want somebody to speak into their life. Guys my age, they're afraid of showing chinks in their armor.
Right.
They're afraid that somebody's going to think they're weak. They're not what they're supposed to be. They're the pastor.
Well,
they have all the answers.
We know this. There's also a sideline to that. There's a reason to be suspect of anybody helping you. That's because true. Back in the day, if you admitted to a problem, you were sidelined.
That's exactly
and
right.
shamed.
Exactly.
The rehabilitation programs in a lot of churches and denominations was not really meant to get you back. It was to get you out.
That's right.
And say, we're going to help you. But most of them didn't come back to the level they were when they left.
One of the things that we do, John, is that we make a covenant with any pastor that we work with, that anything they say to us will never be spoken to anyone ever, anywhere, not even in a prayer request.
Right.
Because I figured out that's the way preachers go.
Yeah.
John, I don't know if you know this or not.
Right.
Brother Michael,
sure.
There, he's going through this. He's got a problem. Don't tell anybody.
Right.
Just pray for.
I'll only tell 7 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. My prayer chain. Yeah, that's how that goes.
Yeah. And so we just really believe. In fact, if you're watching today, I just want you to know that God didn't call you to beat you up.
Right.
He called you to be a blessing, and he called you that you can be able to minister to your people. You can't do that if you're completely drained all the time. And so we have developed a process that we can help pastors learn how to find dependable people they can put their weight on. Recently, I had a pastor of a church, almost 2,000 in attendance on Sunday. They just went to 4 services on Sunday, and so he was desperate. He was killing himself pastoring that church, leading that church, and so he got into our program, but he tried to do it on such a huge scale. He pulled 40 guys into this.
Wow!
And tried to mentor them, and some of them just weren't there. Spiritually, they weren't there. Socially, they weren't there. Domestically, they weren't there. One of the things that we do is talk to pastors about their home life. If you can't priest your house,
right,
you probably can't pastor the church.
You're right.
And so he failed miserably. But the good news is he didn't run away. He came back to us, and he said, I remember what you told me. Find 2 or 3 or 5 or 6 or 10 or 12 that you can put your weight on, people that you can have confidence in when you're not in the room. You can have confidence in people who have a great prayer life, people who have a commitment to the church, people who have a commitment to me, people who value my voice in their life, those kinds of things. And he said, I found 3 couples in this church of 2,000. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm starting over with
That's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough to get started. Well, that's good. Well, you've given us some wonderful advice today. Now, I appreciate what you're doing in pastors' lives. My parents were pastors. My grandparents were pastors. So I know the strain that can be in a pastor's home, mm-hmm. and we need people like you that also, you pastored how many years?
Over 40 years.
Over 40 years. So you and your wife made it. You're still together and happy. So this is the kind of people that need to help pastors who are in trouble. So
We've been married 56 years.
oh, congratulations.
It's better now than it's ever been.
Oh, that's great.
The early days were kind of rocky,
Well, yeah,
but we've made it for 56 years, and we had a little bit of experience.
Well, I appreciate you, Keith. Thank you for what you're doing in SafeNet Ministries. And again, here's their information. If they can help you in any way, please reach out to them, even if you're in another nation. And remember, pray for your leaders. That number one thing, pray that they will flow in the gift of discerning of spirits as they rally people around them to lead God's house. Thank you again for who you are, what you're doing, and love you guys, and want you to stay in hope. God bless.